Welcome to Tao Living, the Art of Living podcast with your host, Corleto, where you will be supported to remember that you are the driver and not the vehicle, so that you can walk your life in trust.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Tao Living podcast, the Art of Living. Today's episode will be an introduction to conscious languaging. Let me start with this. So in James Allen's classic book, As A Man Thinketh, he starts the book off with this beautiful piece. Mind is the master power that molds and makes, and man is mind, and evermore he takes. The tool of thought, and shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000 joys or 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is his looking glass. I love this passage so much for so many reasons. And I open up this conversation with that piece of one, oftentimes when I'm working with people, clients, students, the question is, well, how do I know what my dominant thoughts are? Hence the last sentence in his prose there, which is environment is but his looking glass, meaning look at your life. And look at your life not just out there, but look at your life in here too, because like it or not, everything that is in your field, you have brought to you, right? So hence the term conscious languaging. That means it's time for humanity, and it's time for all of us to become more conscious, meaning taking more responsibility for our lives. And that's across the border. Thoughts, words, deeds, actions, the entire umbrella. And so a large part of my earlier life, I wasn't doing any of that. Not until I had my personal significant wake-up call. I had a spiritual awakening in my mid-20s after breaking myself multiple times to get to that point because I was resisting. And in this process of awakening, then my teachers began to appear. And one of my greatest teachers landed in my lap, in my field, to begin unraveling my distorted and tied up consciousness, to set me free so I can continue my own personal journey. And through his guidance. So he started with what he called thoughts are things. And I innately came with conscious languaging, simply from the place that it's around. For me, it was a process of becoming more conscious and using languaging to do so, right? Not just language, and I'll explain that in a bit. So the term for me, conscious languaging, is a process, one of the tools for self-mastery. That's why I use it for myself and my clients. It's one of the 3 core pillars that I work with: conscious languaging, conscious breathing, and upleveling the nerve system. When either one of those 3 are game changers, all 3 together, solid package for self-mastery, personal growth, and evolution. So why bother? Like, so what? So I'm going to unpack a couple places of why bother and why it's essential to do so. First, most people don't realize that they're not even choosing their own thoughts. Last night I taught a larger section of conscious languaging. I'm in a month or so I'll have a brand new course put out. And so I was working with this beta group, teaching, but also getting feedback about what should go in this course, not what's maybe too advanced, what needs to be trimmed in the fat, that kind of thing. So they were learning, but I was also learning too about what's going to eventually go into the final product. In setting the stage during this event last night, it was imperative to address actuality, reality, and perception, right? And so the metaphor that I use for actuality is like a night scuba dive. If you've never been in the ocean at night, it's dark, like this dark, like you can't see your hand, unless you have some source of external light. And so when you turn on a light, especially if it's a cone light, all you see is what that light shines on. That's it. Now, actuality is everything in the ocean is still there. You're just not aware of it. So even 5 feet from me, if I'm diving, there is animals and creatures and sea life and plant life. I just can't see it. But what I do see is in my field of view because of the cone of light. So that's really my current reality. That's it, because everything else I don't see. However, it's still there, right? So actuality. Now, the whole reality part of that's what I see. Well, here's a wacky kind of concept here, but it's true physiology and physics. I don't see out of my eyeballs. Like, this is kind of a strange concept because we think we look out of our eyes, but we don't. Your eyes are lenses. They receive information. So like an antenna, right? You can't look out of an antenna. You can only receive information through it. Your brain is what processes the information that comes in through your eyes. Your eyes just focus information that is processed by your brain. Just like your hands, when you touch, you're not touching with your hands, you're actually feeling with your brain. You're just using the sense organs in the fingers and the tips to receive that through the nervous system into the brain, and you process. So the 5 senses are processing information in the brain, but we think we're going out there to do that, and it's not what's happening. I know that seems kind of like, but that's the deal, right? And so the process of perception is what leads to each person's reality, right? So here's the challenge: is when we think there's a reality that we all agree to, and it's just not. It's not real. There's actuality, but we all perceive everything differently because of how we interpret the information in our senses, because of our past experiences, because of our cultural influences, because of our family influences, because of our environment, socioeconomics, our educational level. All of these things then influence our perception. Right? I get it. That's a lot. And then we attempt to communicate with other people, right? So that'll be a whole nother topic. Now, I set that stage because in that place of, let me go back here. Give you a couple more ground pieces. So Carl Jung says, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. Psychologists have been saying for eons that 95% of our thoughts are subconsciously driven. So we're only really driving 5% through the conscious mind. When I mentioned before that most people don't realize they're not choosing their own thoughts, because they aren't. We've been told how to behave since we were little, how to behave, what to think, how to think. Again, there was a study I shared last night that by the time a child is 5 years old, they've heard the word no 40,000 times. 40,000 times. No, 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 right? And what does no do to our system when we hear it? Well, it shuts us down. And when we hear it on a regular basis, which is almost all of us experienced that growing up. Don't color outside the lines. Don't run out in the street. Don't do this, right? Some was definitely for safety, but a lot of it was not. Well, it still sets up limitations. Well, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. And listen to my terminology. I just started saying to myself, I can't. And then we get people laying their stuff upon us. You might be singing in the shower and somebody says to you, you're not a good singer. You can't sing. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, I guess I can't sing. And we start running stories that we never began with in the first place. They were inserted into our biocomputer, if you will, and then we started running them. I'm not fast enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. Fear, lack, limitation. So the language that most people run are based on that. Separation, fear, lack, and limitation. And then we drive our life from it. Wondering why we're not achieving the things that we desire, but our heart does desire it. And we put effort into it and still just don't seem to be able to achieve that. Because we're driving processes, right? So it's like trying to drive the car down the highway, pushing the gas and the brake. There's the good intent, but we're working against ourselves because of dominant thoughts based on the process. So as Jung said, not until we bring the unconscious conscious can we then clean that up and address it. Hence the process of conscious languaging. There is a proverb, right? 1821 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." I share that because leading into, there was a research study, the folks from positive psychology, they wanted to see word usage and connection to health or illness. So they picked one specific illness, which is atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries. And they wanted to see, which leads to heart attack, right? One of the major killers in the United States. And they wanted to see, is there correlation? So they studied word usage in social media, and they picked one platform, Twitter. They watched 80 million tweets. They didn't watch them. They studied them. They gathered over 40,000 words, and they started creating an analysis. They looked at the Northeast United States, and they looked county by county, and they mapped where people that had atherosclerosis, being by the CDC. I mean, this was all purely data-driven research. So the world of psychology, information from the CDC, and they had placed a map, Northeast United States, people that had diagnosed illness, atherosclerosis, heart attack. And then they put these word choices that they studied from the 80 million tweets and the 40,000 words used. And they were correlated, almost identical. And the word choices that generated the illness were based on fear, negativity, lack. And then they had another map where the reduction of low risk for atherosclerosis or heart attack. Also, different word choices. And the map identified where people were not having that, right? So if I haven't articulated that clearly, let me wrap it up really quick. Basically, what the study found was simply watching people's pathways of using word choices, right? And so created illness. This is the power of words, right? Back to the proverb, which is death and life are in the power of the tongue. Do we use it for us or against us? And since 95% of our thoughts are unconscious, most what we're running, we're not aware of, right? Below our conscious awareness. So until we start becoming conscious of such, they're going to keep running our life. Now, if they're patterns that are healthy and well-being, great, run them. If they're not, you might want to upgrade them, right? That's the gift and the power of conscious language, one of the gifts, but it's a profound one. Well, how do we do that? Start noticing the words you use. Hey, look, we're going to go on a trip. You want to come with us? Oh, I can't. Whoa, what do you mean you can't, right? Can't is an impossibility. It's one of the most devastating words we can ever have in our vocabulary. I can't. I can't run. I can't sing. I can't. Whoa. So until we're willing to shift that and upgrade it, to open up the doors from not possible to possible, right? So how do I move up this ladder? Well, I can, I choose to, I will, right? And will is better than can, but it's still future pace. I will travel, cool. Well, when? Right? When we use words that are in the phrase what we call negation. So I make a statement like, wow, you look beautiful in that dress, but. So anytime I use the word but, it negates everything I said beforehand. And that creates more devastation, not only in communication, but to our own self. The way we can set ourselves free is simply change the word from but to and, because it keeps the process going, right? Another concept of codependency. I'll be happy when you're happy. I'll feel successful when my dad's proud of me, right? These are all conditional on something or someone else. That's codependency versus co-empowerment. I am happy and I hold the space that you're happy. Now, if you're happy, great, but if you're not, it doesn't change my happiness. In the previous codependency, I'll be happy when you're happy. Well, what if you're not? Then I'm not. My whole flow is now tied to you. That's not really a good place to be. But we don't, until you pay attention to how you articulate, you don't realize that you're tying yourself to these types of things. Yeah? And so the process of scanning your communication with yourself first and with other people, just begin to notice, right? So be the observer. One of the biggest things that I've watched in my own evolution and in humanity as I work with people is one of the greatest challenges is people have given up the reins of their mind. What I mean by that is they've let their mind run their life, forgetting that their mind is a tool for their use, right? The mind's a great tool, but it's a crappy master. But most people have turned it over, right? So it's like letting the employees run your own business. If you're the business owner, you need to run the business, and the employees help you get it accomplished. But you don't let them run it, because then they take over, and you're no longer running your own business, right? So the mind starts to run your life, and that doesn't turn out so well. And people are like, well, I don't know how to get my mind under control, right? I don't sleep well because my mind is busy. And right there is information. My mind. Well, if you have a mind, then who are you? That'll be a whole different podcast. But we can just go there, meaning you have a mind, whatever you want to call you. But you're not your mind. You have a mind, right? It's already inherent in your communication. Great. Get it back under control. Pull the reins back in and teach it again that you're the master and the mind works for you. You don't work for it, right? So that's one of the biggest things. Get your mind back under control. And that alone will change your life. How do you do that, you might ask? Well, one of the ways, there's lots of ways. One of the most powerful ways is breath hold. Teaching yourself breath hold because you're fighting that urge to breathe and you get to deal with your monkey mind. That's a great way to teach it to get under control because it wants to scare you and cause you to do stuff. And when you keep bypassing that and not let it take you out, it starts to have to get reined back in, right? So that's a great way to do so. Consistently use of conscious language is another one as well, because you're now participating in the process of your choices. You're now choosing what you want, not focusing on what you don't want. Most people spend their life focusing on what they don't want. I don't want to be in debt. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be in another yucky relationship. So we're clear about what we don't want. We just don't realize that by continually focusing on what we don't want, we keep bringing it back into our life, right? Wherever focus is, energy flows, right? And so learning to shift our focus is a huge piece. Shifting your focus and then address what you want, not what you don't want. And then now re-articulating statements in that direction. Last night we talked about it. An example was like, I can't play piano. Well, what if you could? Well, I would choose to. Great. See, from I can't means it's impossible to I would like to. Great. I can because I have fingers and I could. I just need to learn. Great. Well, I choose to learn. Awesome. That's moved me up the ladder to the point of I am playing piano. That's now actuality, right? I'm touching the keys and sounds are being made. So that whole process of word choice changes, right? The power of words, right? Thoughts are things. The words you use are critical. And this was just meant to be an introduction, but I'll drop this little gem. Realize the power of this. Words we're using our spirit, our breath, to cause oscillations in your vocal cords to make sounds that we call words that impact the field, the vibration of the universe. Other people, right? When we communicate, we penetrate, and that's how we don't hear words, we hear vibrations. We experience the vibrations. The brain interprets. What am I saying? How is it being said? And when I'm clear and I'm connected and I'm focused on what I'm after, and I'm also driving that with emotion, I get to generate that in my life. Now, that works in any form or fashion. If I'm clear on what I don't want, and I am upset and angry about, I don't want that, I drive that into my life and even more. But if I'm clear about what I want, and I'm driving that with positive emotion, gratitude, appreciation, joy, caring, then I bring that into my life profoundly, right? So the emotion is the amplitude and the driver of the word choices that we use. So we're talking about frequency and vibration, right? Again, that's starting to go past the introduction of this concept of conscious languaging. So a couple quick practical applications. Again, noticing your languaging, noticing your phraseology. One of the experiences I share when I first started this process 35 years ago is I noticed a phrase that I would say periodically that had to do with efficiency, and it was classic in terminology, right? In Western culture. Hey, let's I'm going to do this and this and this. Let's kill two birds with one stone. It's a phrase for efficiency. However, I respect all sentient beings. I'm not a hunter, and I've been a vegetarian for 30 some odd years. Why do I want to kill any birds? I don't. So then why am I saying that? Well, it's because of what I learned, and it was just part of my repertoire to speak. Yeah, but it's not in alignment with who I am. And so it was up to me to choose not to say that anymore and replace it with something that was in alignment of who I am. I hope that makes sense. I trust that makes sense. And so again, just a small example, but small in the sense of profound. Otherwise, I keep stating things that are against who I am. That's not in alignment with who I am. So what else am I speaking that's not in alignment with who I am? Phrases that are based on fear, lack, and limitation, right? Well, then I get to notice those and clean them up to bring them into abundance. Like a lot of people talk about, oh, I want to become abundant, but they're still focused on and using the language of separation, fear, lack, and limitation. They just don't realize it because it's been driven in their systems unconsciously. They're not even aware that they're doing it, right? As I wasn't until it was brought to my attention, because I never went in here to pay attention, right? So last perspective on that to make a little clearer the last point that I just made. We live on a planet, and most two legs, humans, only walk on or experience 1/4 of the planet, the physical land masses where people live. But the earth is 3/4 water. How many people go experience that? I happen to be an avid scuba diver, and so I'm blessed that I get to experience that 3/4 of our planet. I've dove on all the great oceans around this planet, and some of the most iconic places in the world to experience, right? The whales and the sharks and the turtles and the corals and the manta rays and all dolphins. And it's just, right? There's so many more species of life below the planet. But we don't experience that because most people don't go there. And I use that as an example is most people don't go in here, meaning what's in here and what's really being said? What's that 95% of unconscious thoughts? Until you're willing to go examine them, which now brings up the whole next topic that I'll end on, which is we're basically reevaluating all your belief systems. Because what's really true for you? Remember, most of your belief systems were installed into you. This is how you should behave. This is your moral compass. This is what your name is. This is what your faith is. You entered into a family, and that's what was laid upon you. I'm not saying any of that is right or wrong by any means. It's up to you to look at it and say, is it in alignment with who you are? A lot of mine that was brought into me, grateful for all of it, but a lot of it wasn't true for me as I started to investigate who I am. And so I released those and chose different paths. But I had to, it was imperative that I also then shifted, right? So when we speak, the words that come out are representation of the consciousness that we're currently in. It's not right or wrong. It's information. Remember at the very beginning, James Allen, the environment is but our looking glass. And so I get to change my consciousness as I change my words. When I change my words, I change my consciousness. It's now it's a dual process that I can intervene. I can grow my consciousness, and thereby doing so, my own word choices will inherently change. I can intervene intentionally, change my word choices, and also expand my consciousness, right? Both of them together, more efficient. Cool. So that was an introduction to conscious languaging. Keep an eye on the podcast. Keep an eye on the audio podcast or the YouTube channel. And we'll make an announcement when there's the official release, probably first part of April, for the actual brand new Conscious Languaging online course, right? Conscious Languaging, a key pillar in a path to self-mastery. Thanks for tuning in to the Tao Living Podcast. Until next time, abundant blessings. Ciao.
Thank you for tuning in to the Tao Living Podcast, The Art of Living. Now go to loucorleto.com, LOUCORLETO.com, to receive your free training, the operator's manual for your vehicle. See, when you buy a phone, you get a manual. When you buy a car, you get a manual. When you entered your body, no manual. Let me teach you how it's really designed to work. Also, help me help others and share this podcast far and wide. And subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, abundant blessings.